Welcome back. This is mental health coping skills for teenagers, young adults, and grown children. Now, particularly teenagers and young adults who learn coping skills at that age will sort of rewire them into the brain, and they'll have them for the rest of their lives as adults. And that's why I'm targeting this sort of age range. However, grown children, myself included, people who are grown and adults, but still have issues with coping from time to time due to their own trauma and their own sort of never learning to emotionally regulate, etc., etc. Well, we could use coping skills too. So I'm in that category. I'm someone who practices this, even though I am by no means perfect at it. And that's not the goal. The goal is not to be perfect, but to learn skill and to learn autonomy over our own emotions and our own thoughts. So if you're interested in this conversation, stick around and watch the video. Hello, my name is Jesse. Welcome to the channel, Open Source Owners, where we talk about what if humans had an owner's manual. Okay, so let's look at this here. Coping skills, as I define them here, are skills to practice anytime you are struggling. Ultimately, the goal of coping skills is, and how they work, is that they rewire your brain / nervous system. And by nervous system here, I'm really referring to the autonomic nervous system. So the fight and flight side of your nervous system, which is sympathetic, and the rest and digest side of your nervous system, which is parasympathetic. And when we rewire the brain and the nervous system, the goal is to remain in dynamic equilibrium. So that's basically balance. So something disturbs us and we have an emotional or a mental reaction to it, but the goal of a coping skill is to bring us back into a controlled sort of, in DBT, they call it wise mind, a balanced dynamic. So it shifts around, but it's a balanced control state where we're not letting our emotions get the better of us. We're not devolving into self-harm or harming of others. We use coping skills for emotional dysregulation for things like anger, shame, anxiety, depression, and heartbreak, but also coping skills are used for improvements in communication, problem solving, and quality of life. Why we're thinking about teenagers and young adults here is because they can master these skills faster than adults. Adults being more stuck in their ways, having more sort of stuck neural pathways about how they do things and how they react or how they deal with their own emotions. Teenagers don't have that as much. Now, this makes teenagers and young adults capable of being a better adult than fill in the blank. So for you out there, who is it that as an adult you look at and you go, man, I never want to be like that. They're bad at regulating their emotions, or they shut down other people's emotions, or they shame people, or they self-harm, or they shut themselves off of their light in life because of their alcoholism, etc. So this is the moment that you can start to say, okay, I don't want to be like that. So therefore, it is worth me practicing coping skills, even though it takes work and it is challenging. I know that I'm basically wiring my brain and nervous system so that I'm an adult that other people can eventually look up to, rely on, and respect. Grown children need to practice coping skills more often than youth, but it's still worth doing and it will still rewire your brain. By grown children, I'm being a little bit playful here because I'm talking about young adults and teenagers. By grown children, I just mean like adults, right? So you could be 50, you could be 80, it doesn't matter. It's still worth doing if you're hoping to sort of change the dynamic of how you cope or how you deal with disruptive things in life, right? Or just be a better father or be a better partner or be a better business owner, whatever it may be. It's just going to take a little bit more focused attention, more concentration. The brain becomes less and less malleable as we get older, but it's still changeable. It just takes consistent sort of dogged pursuit. And it doesn't take that much. It's not like you have to spend hours a day, 15 to 30 minutes a day doing a certain coping skill can rewire your brain within 21 days to, let's say, 40 days. Somewhere in that window, you'll start to see positive benefits happen in your life. So it's not too far out to see the benefit that nobody is willing to do that work. Yes, it takes work and yes, it takes time, but it doesn't take that much work and it doesn't take that much time. Okay, so when we talk about young adults and teenagers, we have to take into account this. Anxiety affects 1 in every 3 teens, and depression affects 1 in every 3 teens too. Now, this is United States of America data. I think it's similar throughout other westernized countries throughout the world, but obviously it changes country to country, and there's all sorts of dynamics that play into it. But if we look here, youth depression and anxiety doubled during the pandemic. Right? That was in August of 2021 that report came out. Working with teenagers in the program that I work at the hospital, we also noticed this effect. We noticed that anxiety is higher, depression is higher, and it has indeed gotten worse throughout the pandemic. Okay, so let's get into the coping skills. So what can you do as a teenager or young adult? First thing, fix the world and value mental health and emotional training. So in high school, in middle school, in elementary school, throughout our culture, infuse it with understanding how to actually make healthy, happy humans. We know how to do that. We just don't apply it at a cultural or a systemic level. Okay, so that's the first step. Got it? Easy, right? Just fix the world. Okay, so maybe we can't do that very easily. So what can you do, right? There are 4 domains that we're going to talk about here. And these 4 domains are critical. Each one of them is critical, and each one of them needs a little bit of focus. Let's briefly talk about how we can bolster our ability to cope with life's ups and downs, with life's emotional dysregulations through each of these 4 domains. First domain, biological. This is like your physical body. The words in white, I want you to pay attention to. This is basically movement, blood sugar, and sleep. Those are the 3 big areas that will, believe it or not, actually help us cope better with the world. If we're prioritizing sleep, for instance, and we're really setting boundaries around activities that disrupt our sleep, that will immediately make our ability to regulate our emotions and communicate well and problem solve so much better, significantly better. Same thing with movement. If we can do physical movement a day, doesn't have to be exercise, could just be walking or stretching or yoga, 10 to 20 minutes a day, even less than that is fine, but 10 minutes, let's say, as a good baseline number to get to, that will help our biological system be more regulated. And therefore, we'll be more in emotional control and mental control. And then eating to control your blood sugar is another aspect. When we're having blood sugar spikes and dips throughout the day, that can dysregulate the rest of our systems in the body, particularly our neurotransmitters and our hormones, which can make us more susceptible to bad coping or dysregulated emotions or dysregulated thinking patterns. There is the spiritual domain. This is also helpful in our dysregulation and our ability to cope with life's vicissitudes. I don't know if that's the right word. Find meaning, purpose, your gifts, nature, God, whatever of those calls to you. It's very important that we have a sense of meaning or purpose in life, or our depression and anxiety naturally will get worse. If we feel that life is just meaningless or there is no purpose, or likewise, if we have no sense of like, I have value and I bring unique gifts to the world, then we feel like we don't fit in. We feel like we're just a passenger on this ship and we didn't ask to be on it. And that can lead to all sorts of self-harm or self-negative type of thinking or deeper depression or more anxiety. It can lead to all sorts of things. So one of the key features of mental health and coping is actually the spiritual domain. Now, if you're religious or if you're curious about source and like what secret mathematical codes underline everything in nature that we could call God, you could study that. You could develop a personal relationship with God or source or nature, and that will also improve your quality of coping. The social domain. Now, if we look at just the white words here, we have values, a mentorship program, and movement groups. Those are the big 3 suggestions to improve coping. So be around groups with similar values as your own. Of course, if you don't know your values yet, you can explore values a little bit. We just did a video about it that I'll link here. And you could also hook up with my mentorship program. I call it the Home Mentorship Program. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. But this is a mental health mentorship program. It's a cheap monthly subscription where we just sort of like make sure that we're focusing on these 4 domains throughout the course of a year. So that's one way to improve the social dynamics, which quickly lead to our ability to be able to feel more connected, more supported, and ultimately be able to cope better with emotional dysregulation. And if you're suffering, if you get broken up with or something, you can come to your mentorship group and your mentorship program to get a little bit of support. So that can be really beneficial. And then the last one here is movement-based groups, being around other people who have similar values, and you know they do because they're in a movement group that you chose. So if you choose a yoga movement group, the people in that group share similar values, right? And because we have a group setting, we get to casually sort of share personal bits of information while we're doing something positive for our mental health. Guess what? If you get broken up with, that group wants to hear about it. They want to support you. They want to be like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Let's go get coffee after we do yoga or something like that. The group is there to support and sort of like hold you when something really dysregulates you. And the last one, psychological domain. Now, this is the land of how we think and dealing with trauma and stuff like that. The white words are the key here: meditation, breathing, and positive affirmation. 5 minutes or more or less of meditation per day. If you're just starting, you can even do 2 or 3 minutes of meditation. It's totally fine. But learning how to do a basic concentration meditation where you recognize how your thoughts just kind of meander all over the place, and you have a basic practice of bringing your focus back to a focal point. If you do that practice 5 minutes a day or more, let's say 10 minutes a day total or 15 minutes a day total, you will begin to have much more control and much deeper wisdom and understanding of what's going on in your mind and how that affects your emotions and how that can cause you to need coping. So is meditation a coping skill? Yes, but it's a long-term coping skill because you're building that skill to help you later. It doesn't immediately make emotional difficulties go away. That's not how we use meditation. The next one, breathing. There's so many ways to control your nervous system. Remember, we're talking about rewiring the nervous system. The best lever to rewire the nervous system is breath work. And there's a million types of breathing patterns, and we'll discuss that in another video. If you can learn to calm the nervous system through breath work, you begin to have a lot of psychological control over how your emotions are causing you to feel and how your thoughts are beginning to spin. And lastly, positive affirmations is really the way that we can personalize rewiring our brain. And positive affirmations are typically just said out loud multiple times through a series of days. So maybe you'll do 5 positive affirmations that you come up with for 21 to 40 days in a row. Now, what that does is slowly but surely it teaches your brain what you want your brain to perceive in the world. And in this way, we get to actually sort of shape and rewire and sort of sculpt how our brain functions. And that's a powerful skill to be able to do. Okay, questions for you out there. Put any answers to these questions in the comment section below. I'd love to hear it. What things are you most struggling with mentally and emotionally right now? And particularly if you're a teenager, I would love to hear that. Like, hey, I'm a teen. This is what I'm really struggling with, whether it's school, whether it's family dynamics, whether it's just like the state of the world, whatever it may be. I would love to hear that. What coping practices have ever helped you? Have you ever found any that really worked or have worked at some time and then failed to work anymore? Again, I would love to hear that. And I think readers of the comments would benefit from your answers. Do you get support with coping from anybody, or in school or in your culture or in church, wherever it may be? Do you get support with coping, or do you feel like it's all up to you? Curious to hear that. Go ahead and put any of those answers in the comment section below, and I'd love to read them. Thank you. Okay, and if you want a little bit of support with your mental health, whether you're a teenager or an adult who just needs a little bit of extra support, consider joining our home mentorship program. You can see here sort of the bulk of the program. Notice it has these 4 domains that we focus on. So it's got the biological, the spiritual, the social, and the psychological, and we cycle through those with journal prompts, with meditations, with content delivered to your email every single week, and we have live coaching calls where you can get direct access to me if you have specific questions, but not just me, but the whole group. It's really about creating a social milieu where we are supporting each other through upgrading our mental health. And that's what those 4 domains are about, the mental health and the personal development. And it never ends. I mean, we could just keep upgrading so that we are the best version of ourselves that we can possibly be. The home mentorship program is open to anybody. If you're interested, click the link below to find out more, and I'll see you inside. That was mental health coping skills for young adults, teenagers, and grown children. I hope that you found that useful. Obviously, there's a lot more coping skills to teach. Sometimes we actually need to learn how to do, like the nuts and the bolts of the coping skills. Some people want to know about why coping skills work or get deeper into understanding how the brain and the neurotransmitters interact. So that is the basis of what my YouTube channel is all about. So stick around, just sort of peruse my channel, and you'll find all sorts of information related to that. If you have any particular video suggestions you'd like me to make, go ahead and leave the comments below. I'm always looking to make new content and content that is relevant to you. So on that note, thank you so much for watching the entire video. I appreciate you very much. Take care of yourselves out there, and I'll see you in the next video.